directed at a particular speaker, others are not. In the latter case, I will leave it to Elizabeth and Greg to decide who's going to tackle them. So the first question is, how many collector pipelines are needed for the 30,000 wells in Broome County? If a pipeline group wants to continue a pipeline through your property, do you have to sell to them? Do you receive any compensation? What does it do to your property value?
There's no way that I or Elizabeth would have any idea how many feeder pipelines, whatever, is there an impact on the value of the property? And I think right now it may be a little bit too soon to determine conclusively, but certainly if you, the whole premise on value of residential real estate is that you have the quiet enjoyment of that property. And now if you've got a pumping station in a feeder line that is going right through, will that impact the quiet enjoyment? It would appear that that might have some impact on quiet enjoyment, which then goes to value. And again, it's hypothetical now because we don't have anything of that nature in any grand scale that we can draw conclusively historical data.
You probably all know that pipelines are not governed by DEC, but they're governed by an entirely different body, FERC. I haven't dealt with them directly, but if you feared that you had a high-pressure pipeline coming near your house, you should say something about that. You all know about San Bruno, or maybe many of you do, but there was an explosion there, and there were many homes that were destroyed. This is out in California. And again, what we're doing now is we are superimposing a whole new infrastructure. And if you don't think this is in the best interest of what we're doing, this isn't exactly answering the question, but once we start laying the pipelines, it becomes incumbent upon us, perhaps, to use the fuel. So maybe the idea is to speak out if you are concerned about your property value. And again, this is your property value. This is your life savings. This is your most valuable asset. It is your place of quiet enjoyment. And so you can consult with a local attorney, you can speak to your elected officials, you can write to FERC, and I encourage you to do so.
So there are a number of very closely related questions, so I am taking liberty of grouping them so that we don't repeat the same question essentially. So these questions have to do with why haven't banks reacted, or how would banks react? I'm going to read exactly what they say. If default is such an issue, why are banks not taking a stronger stand on property and drilling? Quote unquote, leaser beware. The second related question, which is directed to Greg, what will your bank do about mortgages when you find out a homeowner has signed a glass lease? And then finally, as a homeowner, am I liable for signing conflicting contracts with my lender and the gas drilling company I am leasing to? What legal actions may be taken against me? Is there a precedent for such action? I can repeat some of this if I went on too far.
I think I can go to some of this in a general sense. Why haven't lenders been aware or reacted? In some cases, and Beth and I both mentioned it, is setback distances in other states have been historically much greater than what is in place right now in New York. All right, if you looked at my handouts, there are setbacks that are far greater distance. In other states, there's also been decades ago, Texas is an example, where they're separated the surface rights from the subsurface rights. I'm not trying to address all those issues. I'm talking about New York, where fee simple ownership, buying that core of property, that wedge of property, is the common way to transfer. Lenders haven't seen, until very recently, a significant amount of those gas leases coming up. It's been in the last 5 to 7, maybe to 10 years, where the majority of these leases, again, some of the older leases, the pre-printed ones, has started to be signed. And now those people are coming to us and saying, as lenders, I'd like to refinance because mortgage rates have come down. And we're doing a title search because we didn't know before, and we're finding that there's a lease on the property. What will my bank do? We're looking at each individual situation. They don't meet the secondary market requirements, and those would not be eligible for sale to Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, VA. And that's pretty clear in my mind. So what we would need to do is then decide whether or not we wanted to take additional level of risk to invest in our own portfolio. In some cases, we'll do small amounts of those, but they're not going to be getting that same rate or terms that you would get on secondary market product right now. One of the values of having the secondary market as a whole is that each bank in the 70s, when I got in the business in New York, they had to take deposits in the front door, and they had to mass enough deposits together to be able to make loans out the back door, if you will, with a mortgage loan. And what happens is if the deposits weren't coming in the front door, they couldn't make mortgage loans, so they would stop lending. And there were days that my bank, I'd come in the morning and they'd say, we're not making any loans this week. Now with secondary market, there's a constant flow of readily available, competitively priced mortgage money, and that's the value, so that you can buy and sell properties fairly easy, and there's always going to be financing somewhere. If the secondary market's not going to buy that, then we're going backwards in time, my opinion, to an area that's going to say, all right, based on each individual bank's risk tolerance, how much of that type of product do they want, under what terms and conditions do they want. At the very least, we would ask for all surface activity to be released. There would be absolutely no willingness to finance a property that had any surface rights given to a gas company, so there'd be no surface activity, and then we'd make the people sign an agreement, and my bank does it, and there's several in upstate New York that have started to adopt this, where they'll say you will not renew the lease, you will not allow any activity on the surface of the property, you will not modify the lease in any way. When this lease is up for renewal, you will not renew, and you are aware that this doesn't meet guidelines, and just because I financed it today doesn't mean I'll have the same attitude to finance it 10 years from now. So again, I don't want to say we say no 100% of the time, but it's certainly not going to be anywhere near as easy or as anywhere near as attractive terms to be able to get financing.
I would say that lenders who get paid every month are not aware necessarily that there's a gas lease on a property. You know, we have a $6.7 trillion secondary mortgage market, and those loans were already out there. I think Greg was saying that. So if you think in your mind, make a distinction between the loans that were already made and the ones that will be made in the future. And the ones that were already made, if you're paying the loan, certainly the FHFA, Federal Housing Finance Agency, does not have to send people out to your home to see if everything is okay. It's only when everything isn't okay. And because Nationwide confirmed that they do not insure drilling activity, and as Greg confirmed, other insurance companies confirmed that they don't insure drilling activity, if we start to see homeowners insurance companies not renew homeowners policies on gas leases, there's going to be a shift. Now, I did have this conversation with Greg before this, where he said they're going to get them to get property owners to get general liability insurance under an all-risk policy, which means that the insurance company would cover all risks except that which is excluded. Well, that's fine, but you know what's going to happen. Oh, by the way, that only protects the lender, it doesn't protect the homeowner. So what's going to happen is the first time there's a casualty, they'll have to pay out, and Greg will get paid off, but they'll cancel the policy the next day. So you're not really where you want to be. Oh, and by the way, I do want to say I sent a plan to DEC when I started realizing, you know, I think homeowners are going to be harmed. I came up with this plan called a spacing unit risk management plan, because I figure, well, spacing units are like construction sites. And if you've ever had construction at your house, you want your contractor to name you as an additional named insured on their policy. Does that make sense? That if something goes wrong, that they're going to name you as if you're insured. And I said under that, they should insure you under their general liability and pollution and all the rest of it. And because I'm worried that people are going to lose their homeowners insurance, the gas companies ought to have a line item in there for your homeowners insurance as well. I can't say anybody has been clamoring to talk to me about this idea, but it could work. And you know, the question I think really is, if we were to do the math, would this be a profitable business if the industry was fully paying for its own operations? I think that that's a fair question for us to ask, and frankly, I think it's something for which we deserve an answer.
Well, these follow naturally from that, which is the relationship between homeowners insurance, mortgages, and gas drilling. The first part is, what's the connection between homeowners insurance and a mortgage? I think we've heard a little bit about that already. What's the effect on your mortgage and homeowners insurance if you are compulsorily integrated? And when you talk about liability, what does that mean in practice? What are people liable for? And then finally, does a property that doesn't have a lease have to worry about its homeowner's insurance not being renewed if it has reported water problems and has water deliveries from the gas company?
I can take the last one. Homeowners insurance usually has pollution exclusion under it, and it's going to depend on whether or not these policies are very specific about how your water gets contaminated. There are events and there are slow drips, if you will. And so it depends upon, even if you do have coverage, it depends. I think these are typically, they will cover you for an event, but not something that is slowly happening. And there may be some proof problems there, but one of the things I would say, and this is expensive, and maybe you can find a research university to help you with this, but we all are advocating baseline testing, and I'm sure you've heard this, but it really would be wise in any community that is going to have gas drilling to get your water tested so that you understand where you're beginning. And air is a little bit more difficult. You can't test for every chemical in the water, but people who understand what the signature chemicals are can help you with that. I would suggest people get their health tested. And we were talking about, you know, how do you have those registries, where do you put them? I have a friend, my friend who took my photographs. Henry Fair goes up in airplanes, and I'm hoping that he'll be able to photograph what you topographically, what it looks like, so we can see what happens before and after. That's one of the ways I think we can protect yourself.
And I apologize, I try really hard, and sometimes I forget that I've been talking this lingo for 100 years, and homeowners insurance is, I use that term in a generic sense. Fire with extended coverage is more of a generic name. It's the fire insurance with extended coverage that you have as a requirement of your mortgage. It protects both you as a homeowner. It also protects the bank. It lists the bank or the lender as a loss payee. So that, let's say, for an example, you had a $100,000 mortgage, but your property was worth $200,000. You may insure it for $200,000 if, in a simple scenario, and it's a lot more complex, if you had a total loss, the house burned, total loss, $100,000 would go to pay the bank off. The other $100,000 that you had insured would go to you as the homeowner. That's your equity. So homeowners insurance, fire insurance with extended coverage, a little bit interchangeable. I think that was one of the questions, what's a relationship? And am I sort of hitting on the point of that question?
Actually, that was my question. So the question I have is, if you lost your homeowner's insurance, would you lose your mortgage? Would the bank take away your mortgage?
The answer to the question in simple terms is yes. If in fact your homeowner's insurance was canceled because there was, the insurance company found out that you had signed a lease, and they canceled your insurance, and you were not able to find another company to insure and provide that insurance, that would be a default under the terms of the mortgage, serious enough for a lender to then take action, to foreclose on the property, to try to remedy the problem in some form or fashion.
So as a homeowner, you'd be out on the street, or?
You know, I wish I could give you a yes or a no, because there's a lot of issues involved. There may be a way, rather than the lender taking the property, if this property were contaminated in some form or fashion, the lender may decide not to take the property and go after your other assets. It's called the deficiency judgment, right, my attorney friend? Rather than take legal action with using the property as security, if they felt that the property was not of value, they may try to attach some other amounts of your assets. They would go after you personally and any other assets that you may have had.